So we have potassium hydroxide here, which is going to be KOH. It told us that it's aqueous. And then we have manganese 2 chloride. So that's going to be Mn. And then because it's +2, we need 2 of the chlorides. It's going to be AQ there. Okay, now the potassium is going to switch and become paired up with the Cl, the chloride. And then we have the manganese, which is going to become paired up with the hydroxide. And manganese is +2, so the hydroxide needs to be -2. So that's why there's going to be 2 of them there. Okay, so the first thing was to figure out who's paired with who. And now we need to balance the whole equation. So to balance it out, put some lines under here so we know where we can add them. And first up, we can see that the chlorides are not balanced. So here's one of the chlorides. It has 2, and then over here it has 1. So I'm going to put a 2 in front of this KCl to balance out the chlorides. Now that's going to change the number of potassium. And if we take a look, the hydroxides also, there's 2 over there as well. So we want to put a 2 in front of this as well. And now the whole thing's going to be balanced because the manganese, there's only 1 on each side. Okay, are there any questions so far? Okay, the next thing we do is we check the the solubility chart, and we look for potassium chloride, and we see that it's soluble. So it's an S on the chart, which means that over here it's going to be AQ. Because it's soluble, that means it dissolves in water, so it's going to be aqueous. And then if we look at the manganese and hydroxide, it's an I on the chart, which means it's insoluble, which means it becomes a solid, or you can use PPT, precipitate. Either of those are fine. So I'm going to use solid because that's what we've been doing. Okay, any questions with that? Okay, then next thing we're going to do is we're going to do B, which is our complete ionic equation. All right, so complete ionic equation. What you do for that is every time it's aqueous, you basically split it apart into its ions, and you have to keep track of how many ions it has. So first up, we have 2K plus AQ, and then plus 2OH minus AQ. And both of those come from this right here, because that 2, it gets distributed, right? So it's 2K and 2 hydroxides. So then we end up with this 2K plus aqueous and then 2 hydroxides aqueous. So you have to do that for everything that is aqueous. So the next one, manganese, gets split up. So it's going to be Mn plus 2 AQ. And then even though that there's a number down here, the chloride's down at the bottom, because it's aqueous, the 2 gets bumped to the other side, which again is really weird and rare that it happens. But you can think of this as once it's dissolved in in water, it's going to break apart completely. So there's going to be, for every one of these, we're going to have 1 manganese floating around and then 2 chloride ions floating around. So that's why the 2 goes to the front. Okay, and that's everything for the reactant side. So there's our yield sign. Now we're doing the other side. So again, if it's aqueous, it splits apart. So we have 2K plus AQ plus 2Cl minus AQ. All right, plus now this is the only one that's solid. So it stays together. Mn parentheses OH parentheses 2, and then you get your S or your PPT there. Either one is fine. Okay, are there any questions with that part? Okay, then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to figure out the spectator ions. So the spectator ions, they're aqueous on both sides, and we just cross them out. So if you see potassium It's aqueous on both sides. So you just cross it out. And then chloride is also aqueous on both sides. So you just cross them out. And then what I like to do is I like to circle what's left so I can keep track of it. There should be 3 things left. 2 of them on the reactant side are going to be aqueous, and then 1 thing on the product side is going to be solid. And then all you have to do for the last one, which is the net ionic, it's the net ionic equation, is just bring them down. So then it would be 2 of these hydroxides that are aqueous, plus 1 manganese that's plus 2. It's aqueous. And then we have the precipitate, which is the product that becomes solid. Okay, and that's pretty much all you have to do for these kind of problems. The only thing that I didn't mention that I want to mention now is up at the top, this is called the molecular equation. So we have a couple of vocab words. We have molecular equation, we have the complete ionic equation, we have spectator ions, we have net ionic equation, and all of these solids, they're the precipitate.